welcome to the YYC Soccer Podcast. My name is Jason Komet, and my co-host is Scott Strasser. Hey, Scott.
Hi, Jason. How's it going? I hear you're going up north tomorrow.
It's kind of a weird, it's not really a long weekend, but it's a long weekend. There's kind of that Monday stuck in there. But yeah, I'm heading north for non-soccer sports purposes. Going to basketball tournament. Kids are in basketball tournament up there. So yeah, gonna watch some hoops and try and fit some soccer on TV around it, I guess.
Sounds like a fun weekend. I, weirdly enough, have a long weekend because I'm going to take the Monday off and work the holiday. But yeah, looking forward to watching some more soccer this weekend.
So if you are a new listener to our podcast, before we dive right into what we do, Scott, what is the YYC Soccer Podcast all about?
So we focus on soccer in Calgary at the amateur, collegiate, and professional levels. We discuss the teams and players from Calgary's soccer community, from the grassroots and amateur leagues up to the university and professional levels.
And this week, we're going to preview Cavalry FC's big matchup against Atletico Ottawa on Saturday. The Calgary Wild are on an international break, so we don't have any matches to talk about, but we're going to kind of do a bit of a breakdown and do a bit of a mid-season report card on things we've seen, things we want to talk about. We'll talk about League One Alberta a bit, and we have an interview this week. Scott, who's our interview with?
Earlier this week, we chatted with Tofa Fakunle, who's a member of Cavalry FC's front office staff, as well as a former player with the club. Another guy I grew up playing against as a teenager, so it was kind of cool to catch up with him. I missed the last couple questions of the interview. I had to take off for a work-related thing, but it was a really good conversation. He's one whose story and journey I've kind of followed along with a lot of interest since finishing my own playing days, and yeah, it's neat to see him in his current role with the club.
Yeah, we get into talking about how he ended up getting involved in the front office and kind of all the big picture about club culture and stuff. So a really interesting conversation, and we'll get to that in a little bit in our Cavalry segment. But let's start off by previewing that big Cavalry matchup here on Saturday.
Hi guys, my name is Tofa Fakunle, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
Jason, we've talked about this upcoming match a couple of times already. It really is a big one. Top of the table clash with Atletico Ottawa this Saturday, 4 p.m. kickoff at Spruce Meadows. Why is this an exciting match?
Well, Ottawa's at the top of the table, and I'd say they've earned first place. Like, they've played pretty consistently well. Cavalry is not far behind them. They had a period in the beginning of the season where they weren't playing as well as Ottawa, and Ottawa got to a bit of a big lead, and now they're at the top of the table. And basically, this is an opportunity for Cavalry to kind of reel them in a little bit, and bring them back into the pack, and also, stake their claim for the top of the table.
Yeah, definitely. Atletico, they've been the team to beat in the CPL this year. Really impressive offensively in particular. They lead the league in scoring with 28 goals from their 12 games, which is an average of 2.5 per game. Defensively, they have been a little bit weaker. They haven't honestly had that great of a defensive record overall. They're kind of in the middle of the pack with 15 goals against. So they do concede, but they score enough to make up for that. The last time that these two teams played earlier this season, I was really impressed by how Atletico fared at Spruce Meadows. And obviously they came out with a 3-1 win, which was a deserved win. And yeah, I think it's going to be a lot harder for them this time around. Cavalry is in red hot form coming into this one with a 10-game unbeaten streak, believe it or not. But Atletico has a 5-game unbeaten streak. So right now you have the two teams in the CPL that are clearly in the best form going head to head. It should be a really good battle.
It's got all the makings of a big game. As far as Cavalry lineup right now, we don't have too many of the details about changes with injury status and stuff, but I did actually notice something today on social media, actually. Did you see that Instagram post Cavalry made about, they asked the players who's their favorite player currently?
I didn't know. I don't think I've been on Instagram in a couple of days. What was the post?
They had a camera as all the players were walking onto Spruce Meadows pitch for training, and they were asking them who is their current favorite player in football. And there's a whole litany of names came out there. Some were Ronaldo and Messi, but then there was the whole gamut of a whole bunch of other players as well. But that was all interesting to watch. But the thing that I got out of it was Michael Baldissimo was walking onto the pitch like to train. So that was a bit surprising because last time we saw him a few weeks ago, he didn't look like he was ready to get on the pitch, but he was not in his leg brace. He was out there and looked like he was ready to train.
That's really surprising because, I think it was only 2 weeks ago at a game he was watching with a pretty heavy duty looking brace covering most of his leg. So cool spot. And I doubt he'd be involved in the match, but it's good to know that he's coming back to full fitness.
Yeah, no, I thought that was really positive. And then the other thing, I think I figured out something else when I watched that Instagram post, Scott. And this is maybe just shows you about how my mind can wander in certain directions. But I was watching it, and there's one of the groups of players they ask. It's Michael Harms, James McGlinchey, and Max Peepgrass. And I was like looking at those guys, and I'm like, man, those guys, they're like, like high school age pretty much. Well, Peepgrass is a bit older, obviously. But anyway, then for whatever reasons, my mind wandered over to this, and I think I figured out why Dan Clark was brought in as a goalkeeper. Because I checked, and Nevin Fuster graduated from high school this year. So I think it's probably somewhat likely that he's going to play university in the fall. And that means he's probably going to be leaving the team in August. And then they're not going to have a third choice keeper. So maybe that's the reason they brought in Dan Clark.
That's a good theory. Yeah, we were talking about why would Cavalry need 4 goalkeepers, but that's a potential reason, definitely. We don't know where he would go, though.
Before we were recording, I started Googling around to see if I could find any welcome to the University of blank Nevin Fuster, but I couldn't find anything like that. So there's nothing I could see publicly anyway. But I just started thinking about that, and the timing would work out because if you are going to go play at school, like you'd have to leave in August. And then that means that you would be without a third keeper for, most of August, September, October. And Dan Clark also, you would make the argument, is due to go back to school to University of Cape Breton, but he's done 4 years there, and maybe the evaluation on his part is, well, do I really need to go back for one more year, or maybe I could stay with the pro club, and so I don't know. It's just a theory of mine, but I just thought that would make sense because they will need a third keeper in August if he does go off to university, and it would seem reasonable to think he might.
Yeah. The irony, though, being, of course, that even Cavalry's second goalkeeper doesn't really get to play ever, because Marco Carducci is a 90-minute per game kind of player, right? He's the club captain, and it would be proactive of Cavalry to make sure that they did have a third choice keeper if they knew ahead of time that their current third choice keeper is going to be going to school pretty soon.
That would have been a perfect question to ask our interview guest, except I figured it out after I saw that Instagram post, which was after we did our interview.
I guess now is a good time to segue into that interview, though, and introduce Tofa Fakunle.
Let's run the interview now.
I'd like to welcome Tofa Fakunle to the podcast. Tofa is a former player with Cavalry FC who has transitioned into a front office position. He is currently assistant general manager of the club. He also grew up in Calgary, playing competitively for clubs here. Tofa, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Oh yeah, thanks for the intro, and thanks for having me.
Of course, yeah, we've been wanting to get you on for a while because we really are interested by your story and how you've gone from being a competitive player. Knew you from the PDL days, knew you played for UNBC, but can you kind of talk about your background growing up and who you played with and how you've turned that into the career you now have with Cavalry?
Yeah, I've had a pretty interesting journey as a human being. I started from way back when I was born in Nigeria, lived there for 5 years, moved to Holland, lived there for 5 years, and then Scotland, and then here in Canada. And I've been in Calgary for about 19 years now. So Calgary's home. I grew up here and met a lot of good people. Started playing for Northwest United initially, and then went to Calgary Foothills. That's where I met Tommy and the likes of Danny Hay, who used to coach me with the 1994s, because I was playing a year up, with Sam Adekubi, Elijah Adekubi, That's where I met them and a lot of my, really close friends now in life, right? And yeah, I was pretty fortunate. Foothills is still an outstanding club and was a place that I was able to grow as a human being, as and an athlete, and I don't take that for granted. And I met a lot of really, really interesting people there. And then yeah, went off to university, UMBC. Went to small school because, I wanted to play. I wanted to play. I didn't really want to lose time in my university career, and also it was a really good school for me on things I wanted to do. To end up studying psychology with a minor in business, and yeah, I guess I graduated from there. Played PDL through the years and got to make some really cool memories, and then got the opportunity halfway through the 2019 season to come on board with Cavalry, and then COVID. For me at my age, I was kind of thinking, what's next for me? I did want to get married soon and, just, have a planted roots in life, and just thought about, okay, do I want to stay in the game or do I want to transition into something else? And, I was at the Talisman Center one day and I got a call from Tommy Wheeldon Jr., who's known me for a long time and just offered me an opportunity to, partake in the Island Games and then think about transitioning into a football ops role.
Was this sort of your, plan to move forward into a like a front office role, like a post playing career role? Was this something that, he was pretty aware of? You talked about, quite a bit previous to actually him offering it to you?
No, it wasn't. It was not on the radar. It was not on the radar at all, and I honestly, I owe Tommy that for thinking of me in that manner and just giving me an opportunity. And I think in life, that's mainly what happens. The connections that you build and who you are as a human being, I think can stick with people, and it can either be positive or negative, right? And I try to make positive impacts, build positive relationships everywhere I go. And you know, I'm just grateful that Tommy just kind of thought of me at that moment in time. There was an opportunity, and he gave me a chance.
Awesome, Tofa. I want to ask you about your role at the moment. What are your responsibilities with the club? I see you at a lot of Cavalry games, a lot of events. I've seen you at other games, like university games, for instance. Can you kind of talk about what your day-to-day job is with the club?
Yeah, so primarily, I handle the player recruitment part of the club, making sure that we have updated our player profiles and we get the right players to fit within the system that Tommy wants to play. And all I can do is, gather that information. I work diligently to make sure that we understand all aspects of the player, physically, mentally, technically, and then we present that to Tommy, and Tommy has the final yay or nay in terms of approval. And he's the boss, so he sets the tone with that. But yeah, day to day, I operate in terms of our budget as well, to make sure that we are sticking to the plan of the business and how we want to do things, especially from the football operations side, and just yeah, making sure that we tick and operate efficiently as a football club, in terms of recruitment and also our football operations budget as well.
With all those hats that you wear in all those different aspects of the operations, is there an area that you particularly enjoy, or maybe an area that, just comes more naturally to you? Sometimes it just something just, yeah, it just seems to be a good fit. Is there any of those roles that would come to mind in that way?
Yeah, listen, I think the one that really sticks out to me is the building of the player profiles and the active recruitment of the team, and making sure that we have the right people within the football club to give us the best possible chance of succeeding, on and off the pitch, right? I think that really speaks to me. And then also, I love the budget aspects also, go hand in hand with that, right? We got to manage our salary cap. We've got to know what we're doing as a club from that side to make sure that we're putting the best product out there that we can, and ultimately competing for championships and developing young players. So it's a passionate thing for me that I love. And I wake up in the morning thinking, okay, how are we gonna get better today? People might say, well, like the transfer window's not open for a couple months or whatever the case may be, but I'm always thinking in my head, and trying to build something so that when that time is right and we're ready, we can activate and go from there.
You're living every football manager player's dream right now, I think. It's football manager
Yeah.
in real life.
Yeah. Well, football manager is an interesting concept, but yes, when we play FIFA and you're on those games and you kind of say, okay, you're working deals or whatever the case may be. And Tommy's, again, been great for me that way because he's given me the ability to do that and the trust and the confidence to do that. You need that as well. You need the backing from your boss to be able to execute. And yeah, once you have that, you have a lot of confidence, to go out there and fulfill. And once you see the product working, the plan working, it gives you even more confidence.
Tofa, I wanted to ask because we've seen a lot of players from Cavalry when they finish their playing days, they stay with the club or they come back to the club in a different capacity, right? Like Mason Trafford, easy example of that. Yourself, Oliver Minitel was with the club, and then we've got Jay Wheeldon Ledgerwood on the coaching side of things. What is it like to have that, and how do you feel that has helped with the club's overall culture since the CPL got going?
Well, it sets the tone. So Tommy set the tone, along with our ownership, Linda, and our president, Ian. They set the tone of what they wanted the culture to be from the onset of the building of the club. And then, Tommy is an excellent individual at bringing the right people in at the right time. And, he surrounds himself with people that he trusts, people that he knows understand the culture that he wants to build at the football club. And it's a family. Once you have that, it's set in stone. It becomes a real family. And I think it's just a huge positive thing for Calgary. I think it's a huge positive thing for the Canadian Premier League because it makes us a little bit different. Football is a ruthless game in the world, but once you have people that have been through that understand, you look at the Ajax model where they continue to have, former players go into management roles or whatever the case may be, coach the team. There's even their new coach right now, Heidema. He used to play for Ajax, right? And they had Van der Sar and et cetera, et cetera. But to my point, when you have people who have, been there, have worn the shirt, understand what it means to the city and the club, you can build with those people. And it's been a huge positive impact that way. And I think that's contributed a lot to our success as a football club.
I noticed that you do have your CSA B license. Like, it sounds like you've got a lot of things going on, obviously, with the club. But how active are you involved, like, in the coaching aspect of things? Like, is that, I don't think you're not typically sitting on the bench during a match or anything, I don't think. But like, how involved are you?
Not involved at all. The coaching is not my strong suit, and that's okay. I think my strong suit again is in regards to player identification, working with Jay and Fran, building the pathway, making sure that we have player sales, and just overall the football element, within the club and bringing people in and out in terms of staff, whatever the case may be. I think that's my specialty. Coaching, I did my CSAB license because at that point, the CPL had a partnership with Canadian Soccer Association, and they offered it to players to, get licensed to see if, maybe that's a path you wanted to go on. I did used to coach, as a youth player, to give back to the youth, which was, awesome. But now as I, go in this path of my career, I think my path is very, very clear. And it makes a lot of sense that way. And I'm totally okay with it. I don't try to tell the coach to say, no, like, I think you gotta do this and that. Like, that's not my job to coach the team. They're the experts on that way. Obviously I know the game and I have feel for the game. And if I'm asked my opinion, I do share that. And we kind of go from there.
You talked about having, you know, Tommy as like a mentor and stuff like that. Do you have any other mentors or people that are sort of taking you under their wing and kind of guided you in addition to Tommy?
Yeah, I've got a lot of people. I got a lot of people that have shown me different things, whether that may be people management, whether that might may be, business leaders within Alberta, Calgary, that have great expertise in their fields and can give me something a little bit different, that are not just heavily involved in soccer. I think it's very, very important, I'm gonna hold those people close to my chest. And I want them to know that, like, they're sincerely appreciated if they're listening to this for whatever reason. But yeah, I think it's important. I think every leader, every person in the leadership position to fulfill their potential, they need to learn from others, because there are different ways of doing things. And if you can do that, not only are you putting yourself in good stead, you know, you're showing an openness and making yourself more well-rounded. So I fully believe in that. But yeah, I mean, everyone knows that Tommy's a big mentor for me. He always will be, and I'm proud to say that.
Now that the 2025 season is well underway, so how would you rate the performance of the club so far? Like, how do you think the season is going thus far from your point of view?
Yeah, we're right there, right? This is Calgary Football Club. You can't, you know, overlook us, and we're gonna be right there. So ultimately, at the end of the day, we've won what, 6 games. We started the season in January with CONCACAF. We had a historic victory there, which was positive for the Canadian Premier League. And I think our performances are right there. I've been steady. I've been good. You know, I think we only have what, 9 goals conceded, what, 20 goals scored or something like that, or 21 goals scored, something like that. But you know, we've accumulated almost 2,000 U21 minutes in 11 games or so. So you know, we'll continue to keep going. We understand that it's a long season, and we will be where we want to be, and we will be there in the end. And I know the rest of the Canadian Premier League knows that. So we ride that with full confidence. And yeah, we'll just keep taking one game at a time.
Based on our conversation here and everything, that you're obviously big on personal development and working on improving in various areas. Is there any particular area in 2025 that you've kind of decided that you want to actively work on, that improve on? Like,
It's a great question. One of the areas in 2025 that I, you know, want to push to work on is how am I going to, you know, give back to my community, the community that's given me so much. You know, what can I do to make sure that I am, you know, giving back? I've got involved with the Calgary Black Chambers, which is an organization that, you know, focuses on Black people as a minority and how we're going to, you know, push them forward, give them opportunity. One of the things that I've been doing is working with the group that controls the scholarships, and making sure that, you know, kids who want to go to university can apply for, you know, a certain type of scholarship and, you know, get financial support or whatever the case may be. Even, you know, sports scholarships or whatever the case may be. I think that's also important. But I want to make an impact on the youth, and not just, you know, Black youths or Black people, everybody, right? And I think, like I said, I've met a lot of good people in this community who have given me so much as a kid and helped me. So now I really want to make an impact in Calgary and just get back. I think is very, very, very important.
how involved, like, you've got the U21 players, like, how involved are you guys in trying to help get them scholarships, get them placed on a university team? Like, is that, like,
It's
I'm
a
sure that there's at least, you do that to a point, but is that something that is a kind of a thing?
Oh, it's a massive thing. It's a massive, massive important part of our pathway system. Is we understand that not everyone's going to be a professional, right? So what are we going to do to help these players with their next step? They can't just stop playing, you know,
Mhm.
they're too young. So can we help them get a university scholarship? Can they play in university, get an education, and then they still the possibility, we still have the U Sports draft, right? We still look at players after they're done university. It doesn't mean that they're not good enough. There's plenty of examples of that. Joe Waterman being one of them, right? Went to Trinity, got drafted, et cetera, et cetera. The history writes itself after that, right? But yeah, it's one of our responsibilities. We want to make sure that they stay in the game, and we help them with that and put them in the best possible limelight. You know, the other day I got a text message from an NCAA school, asking about some of our youth players. So, you know, we want to be in those conversations. We want to give our players that opportunity, and it's very, very important to us.
In the future, where do you see yourself in a few years? Like, what do you have specific career goals, or what are you looking at doing going forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. That's a great question. Listen, I love Cavalry. I'm committed to building this here and making sure that, you know, this league continues to grow and thrive. But yeah, like I'm loving what I'm doing right now. Tommy continues to give me more and more responsibility, and I'm grateful for that. And I want to continue to work in professional football. in terms of building teams, building, contributing to building an overall club, is very important to me. And, it's in my backyard, so it's awesome. And, we'll see where things go and kind of go from there. But yeah, I'm very grateful, very happy, and really, really looking forward to the growth of this league. So let's see how much more we can continue to push the game, and with the helps of you guys, continue to grow that, football atmosphere in Calgary and in Canada. I think the sky's the limit.
Is there anything else that you wanted to add in? Like, the floor is yours for sort of the wrap up. Anything you want to add in?
No, I just want to appreciate you guys. I really do mean it. I know I said it offline before we started, but I really want to appreciate what you guys are doing. It adds to the football culture in this city, adds to the football culture in this country, and we need to continue to do that. Have more discussions about what football and how football's impacting clubs and just the overall game. And as we grow that organically, it's gonna be really, really something beautiful to watch. So I'm grateful for you guys for inviting me on, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak.
Thanks again to Tofa for doing the interview. Jason, as I mentioned, I missed the last couple of questions, but I was disappointed that I had to because I was really enjoying the conversation.
Yeah, it's really cool story, and I think the whole journey and the concept of, bringing former players into non-playing roles and the whole nurturing of that. And, it's been an opportunity that, he's jumped on and taken advantage of. And I think he's really found his calling here, and in this role. And yeah, it's really cool.
It's a job that I think a lot of people would love. Hey, like to be involved in the recruitment side of professional athletes and to be involved with helping run a club. And yeah, he clearly has taken to it. I've seen Tofa out at a lot of different games and events, and he's clearly a devoted member of Cavalry FC.
This is Jacqueline Savixi, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
So our next segment is about the Calgary Wild, and as you mentioned, there is no game this weekend for the team. Another international break in women's soccer. So we wanted to do, even though it's not midway through the season, we wanted to do a mid-season report card. They are more than 1/3 into the season, so I think we've had enough games that we can really start to evaluate how the Wild look as a team.
I think the sample size is big enough that we've been able to form a few opinions about sort of what we think are some of the things that are really working out and some of the things that maybe aren't.
Yeah, I know we kind of approached this in different ways. I went position by position and gave them like a letter grade as if we were in school, so A, B, C, or D. And then I kind of gave an overall grade and just jotted down some notes that I wanted to bring up. But you went really deep into your analysis, which I got to commend you for.
And I love trying to work out some numbers and break things down. And when I started looking some of these things up, I started just creating a Substack post with some of the information I found, and I'm gonna publish that shortly. And it's even deeper into this than probably we're going to talk about. And I'll commend anyone who makes it to the end of it. It's very long. You want to run through it sort of by position in general? Like we'll hit sort of, defenders, midfielders, forwards, keepers in some order.
Sure, let's go in that order. Starting with the defense. I personally gave the Wild a B for their defending. The reason I gave this is I think that defense is the Wild's strong suit. I think it's been their most obvious strength so far. They've conceded 12 goals in 9 games, which is a little more than 1 goal a game, but it's the third best defense in the Northern Super League behind Ottawa and Montreal. And I think the Wild have formed a really important partnership between Michaela Moore and Mika Rolfsema. I think that they have a really good thing going. And I've also been pretty impressed by Grace Storty, who tends to start, pretty much always starts at right back. And then on the other side, the other fullback on the left side, Ali Green. So I've been impressed overall by that starting back four, which is pretty set in stone. I think what happens is when Lydia Bedford has to make changes to her defensive lineup, that's when the gears start to fall off a little bit.
Well, if you look at the first games, I think it was about the first 6 games before the first international break, that back four was pretty much unchanged. All four of those players, they all started and they played most of the minutes. I know Michaela Moore and Mika Rolfsma were pretty much playing 90 minutes a match. Then the international break came and that's where the problem started. So I think that there's a real question here about the center backs and about the depth. Like when you start looking at putting together a roster of 23 players, you need to have center backs. And they only have 3 natural center backs on the roster, and that's the 2 that start and Talia White. And based on what we've seen, I'm really not sure where Talia White stands with this club and where she stands with, the coaching staff having, trust and faith in her, because she hasn't really played in some situations where it seemed obvious that she should go in.
100% agree with you. That was one of the notes I took down here. There hasn't been a lot of faith shown in Talia White as far as we know. We haven't been informed if she was carrying a knock or something in the early weeks of the season, but it wasn't until the 8th game of the season that she made her debut for the team. And that was despite the loss of Rolf Sima and Michaela Moore in the game previously. And you and I were asking, why not play Talia White there? The club had started Tilly James instead. And yeah, I guess she's more of a fullback converted into a center back in this case. But it is very apparent that when Rolfsema and Moore aren't able to start, the Wild's back four just hasn't had the same level of security and stability.
Well, there have been those 3 games after the break. And the first one, Rolfsma was injured and Moore, wasn't fit to play after traveling. And what they did for center backs in that match is they put Tilly James in, who has played center back. She's not a natural center back. She's a natural fullback, but she has played some center back. So it's not a totally foreign position to her, but, not really her primary position. But then here was the part which really caught my attention is they drafted Sonia O'Neill and to play that role. And if you remember in the post-match press conference, Scott, Lydia Bedford said that she told Sonia like a couple hours before the match that you're going to be playing center back.
Yeah.
So that seemed really weird to me that, you have a player who never plays center back and basically a couple hours before the match, you tell them they're going to play and that you can kind of throw them in there. And, I think she did a pretty valiant job there. By the end of the match, I think it was getting hard, but that was the choice they made. Talia White sat on the bench for that whole match, and you would just think that why not? And then in the next match, yeah, again, they had, Michaela Moore came back and Tilly James was playing for Rolfsma, and then Tilly James got hurt. And what did they do? They took Allie Green out of her natural fullback spot and put her at center back, and left Talia White on the bench. And the defense looked terrible and they got a couple goals scored on that side. And then finally at that point at halftime, they put her in. So I don't know, like she started the final match before the break, but I don't know. It's a mystery. And I guess they have to decide on their end. Can they trust Talia White? Do they have faith in her? Because you got to have a third center back that you've got faith in, that you can trust, because you can't go a whole season playing with 2 center backs. And even if that third center back, you don't rate them as high as the starter, you got to have someone you feel like you can put in.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing I'd like to note is I have to preface this by saying I haven't seen every Wild game, but I don't think they ever deviate from a back four, right? Like they haven't gone with a back 5 or a back 3. And I'm curious if how they do with the different defensive shape, but at the same time, I think that they seem to really favor having two center back pairings.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a time where they've changed up the formation from what they've had. So
no, but again, going back to my B grade, I do think that it has been a strength of the Calgary Wild, and that's reflected in the goals against average and just overall, like when they do have their preferred back four, it really does seem to be a hard nut to crack.
They've got a good cast overall. They just need to figure out how to tweak it and how to work on the depth.
Segueing into midfield, though, I gave the midfield a B-. I've been really impressed by the passing range of Jackie Savitsky. the grit and physicality shown by Maggie Doherty-Howard, and the offensive threat of Janaea Robertson, who has scored 2 really nice goals. But yeah, there's definitely room for improvement in midfield as well.
Yeah, I think that the midfield has been pretty solid. I think I expected a little bit more offensive output from Maggie Doherty-Howard, but overall, I still think she's played really well. She's led the team in minutes. Jackie Sawicki has been playing, really well. And it took a few games to figure out the third starter, but Janaea Robertson's, she started, I believe, the last 5 games, and she's looked good out there, and she's scored a couple goals. And yeah, I think it's a good group. My other comment here is sort of similar to what we talked about in the with the defenders. There isn't a lot of depth, like Jackie Sawicki is 32 years old. She's the oldest player on the team, and on a regular basis, she flies halfway around the world to go play for the Philippines. I don't think it's realistic to expect her to play every minute of every match with her still being effective and healthy. Like, they need to have somebody that can, spell her off and that sort of thing. And really, they haven't had a lot of support from the depth there either. Sonia O'Neill has played a little bit, but they haven't really had anyone sort of push for minutes lately in the midfield.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, Sonia O'Neill has had 2 starts. She did get a goal, which is great. We've seen Maddie Wilson get 1 start and some sub appearances, I believe. Keelan Stewart as well, the youngster, with just the 1 start. So they do have depth in midfield, but it's definitely like a secondary cast, right? Like, those are definitely players who haven't really been given an opportunity to get a lot of minutes. We also have Farkunda Mutaj, who's been injured the entire season. The Wild's very first signing. I'm wondering how much she would have played if she were fit. But overall, for those reasons I mentioned, I do think the center of midfield has gotten a B-, if not a B. As for the Stewart sisters, I do think that they don't look out of place at all at the pro level. And I do think that they could probably play together at the same time a little more than they have gotten to.
I've been quite impressed in the times that they've been out there. Tegan scored a goal and they've looked pretty good, but I agree. They've only spent a few minutes on the field together. So overall, though, they're young, but I think we've seen a lot of positive signs out of them. And I think, they've gotten a chance to play, and I've enjoyed watching them out there. And I think that, I see bright futures for both of them right now.
Yeah, and they're definitely representing the city proudly, right? But when you look out wide, I wanted to talk about wingers and lump them in with the midfield as well. I've really liked the right wing. I think Sarita Thurton kind of burst onto the scene. She's definitely a weapon for the Wild. However, she hasn't really generated, she hasn't scored yet. She's got 1 assist. So she hasn't been able to convert her threat level into offensive productivity, per se.
Here's a place where we're going to diverge in opinion a bit, Scott. I really like Sarita Thurton. I think she's got tons of potential, and she looks threatening when she has the ball, but I don't think she can be the every match starting up front. I just don't think at this point in time, the results haven't bared it out. She's got 1 assist, and I think she probably would be a bit better served by maybe being an impact sub off the bench, bringing in some of that energy in the second half and maybe starting sometimes. But I think that it's a lot of pressure and to be the every match starter. I'm not ready to give up on her by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm not really so convinced that she should be starting every match.
I like your opinion that maybe she could be a more effective impact sub, because she can definitely bring that speed that she has into a game, maybe when the other team's left back is starting to tire. I would like to see that happen, actually, because she always has these glimpses of attacking threat and speed in the first half, it seems, and then in the second half, we have often seen her get subbed out, which is not a surprise. When you're on the wing, you do run a lot. Yeah, I do think, though, that once she does get a goal, it can really open up for her, and she can finish the season with a handful of goals.
On the other side, it's kind of been done by committee. It's been Sarah Griffith, it's been Christy Gray, and it's been Danielle Steer, who have kind of, all 3 of those players have put in minutes as the third forward. None of them have had any particularly positive results.
Yeah, the left is a lot less fruitful, it seems, than the right in terms of where the Wild like to play the ball. And yeah, the stats, like those players you kind of mentioned, they haven't managed to get on the scoring sheet very much between the three of them.
One thing that I haven't seen mentioned anywhere, and I'm presuming that probably early next week this will be made official, is that Sarah Griffith is expected to leave the club. When she joined the Wild on a loan from the Chicago Red Stars in the NWSL, the Red Stars put out in their press release that the loan would last until June 30th, and that is when her contract with the Red Stars expires. So what I got out of that is she'll be out of contract, so basically her loan would end as a result. So either the Wild will have to, if they want to keep her around, I guess they could sign her, but it also just frees up that spot if they don't. So they will have an opportunity to sign another player, and it will free up international roster spots. So I think we're going to see a change there for sure.
What have you thought about Sarah Griffith? Because she did bring that NWSL experience to the NSL. She's garnered 2 assists from 4 starts, 357 minutes. She did get that concussion that kept her out of a couple of games. I've liked her, but yeah, it seems like she didn't nail down a starting position.
Well, if you have to compare the three of them between Christy Gray, Danielle Steer, and Sarah Griffith, probably on a minute-to-minute basis, Griffith has been the one who maybe has been more effective, a couple assists, and she's done a couple things out there, but she's been hampered by injury the last several matches. But I don't think there's really been enough there that would make me think we gotta re-sign her after this loan. So I guess that will be dependent on who else they've been able to find. But Christy Gray and Danielle Steer have been disappointments. Forwards are hired to score goals, and they haven't done it.
So I guess we should start now talking about forward, because we've kind of moved up from midfield. Personally, I kind of agree with you that the forwards really haven't made it happen for the Wild yet. I gave this position overall a D.
Well, and the only reason it even gets a D is Callie Johnson. Like, she's been the best player by a wide margin. She scored 3 goals, and she's looked good when she hasn't been injured. But, she looks like a very inspired signing, bringing her in from Australia. But, at the end of the day, she's one person, and they need more than one goal scoring threat up front.
For sure. No, they've scored 12 goals in 9 games, which is, I will point out quickly, the same number of goals that they've conceded. So they have a 0 goal differential. But here's the thing that I wanted to bring up is of those 12 goals, 7 came in 2 games against Halifax, which is the team at the bottom of the table. So if you take those 7 goals from 2 games out of there, the Wild have scored 5 in 7 games. They've scored 1 in their 2 games against Ottawa, 2 in their 2 games against Toronto, 1 in 2 games against Vancouver, and 1 in 1 game against Montreal. So when they take on a team that is of equal caliber or above them in the table, they really don't manage to produce that much offense. And yeah, as you mentioned, Callie Johnson, 3 goals, but I think she's only started 5 because of her injury. So she's had a pretty decent return, but we haven't seen goals from some of the other players expected to score. Like, as mentioned, Christy Gray, Sarita Thurton, Danielle Steer did get the 1. Sarah Griffith hasn't scored yet. So this has really been where the Wild has been lacking.
I'm not really sure if I really appreciated how much Christy Gray and Danielle Steer were coming in with a goal-scoring pedigree. But listen to this. These are the numbers, career numbers for these two players. Christy Gray played for Queens, and she scored 28 goals and had 16 assists in 54 games with Queens. Then she turned pro in 2022 in Sweden. She led her team with 4 goals and 19 appearances. Then in 2023 and 2024, she played for Shelburne in the Irish League. She scored 10 goals and 36 appearances. And then Danielle Steer, her numbers at UBC, I believe, set records. She scored 57 goals and 28 assists in 97 matches. And last year, she played with Kaylee Books and Talia White at Treaty United, and she got 8 goals in 11 games. Their resumes basically show that they're both should be considered consistent, high-producing goal scorers, and it ain't happening.
Yeah, I think that's some really good analysis, and you have to start wondering, like, why hasn't it been happening, and will it happen, right? Like, there's lots of games left, but there's a lot of area for improvement, and yeah, so that's why, in my opinion, they get a D in the forward
Yeah.
ranks. I don't think I can say a lot about the goalkeeping, but let's quickly talk about that. It's not a position I ever played or am familiar with or really pay much attention to, but I did give the goalkeeping a B, but I put a question mark behind it because I'm by no means a goalkeeping expert. I have thought that Stephanie Bukovic in particular has looked really solid in her 7 games. She seems to make good saves, have good distribution, and I rarely think that when the Wild concedes that it's due to a goalkeeping mistake.
I think that last thing you said really encapsulates it for me. I think that we haven't seen a lot of mistakes that have cost goals that the keepers have made. They've let some goals in, but you're always going to let some goals in. And I think Bukovic has been pretty solid and dependable.
So I did give the Wild a C, which I guess you could constitute as a passing grade. But at this point in time, things aren't looking that great, although things can change quickly, I think, in the NSL, which is a very parity-rich league. They're in 5th place right now in a 6-team league, so they are toward the bottom of the table. They've generated 11 points from 9 games, which is an average of 1.2 points per game. That average over 25 games, which is the length of the regular season, certainly won't win you the league. And I doubt it would put you in the top 3, which is where I think the team is going to want to finish. So there are areas for improvement. I think we've talked about that at length. I think the priority needs to be up front in attack. That needs to be where they focus their next signings on. I wanted to mention this. The Wild haven't had a penalty yet, unless I missed one. But
they have not. It is kind of strange. You've gone 9 matches and they haven't been able to get a penalty. I don't know what the typical stats are, but that seems like a very long time to not have gotten a penalty.
And I think not getting a penalty, you can't put that down to just like, oh, it's bad luck. Like, if you're getting into the box a lot, you're going to get fouled. And it just is a sign to me that they're not getting into the box enough.
There's got to be some decisions made about what the plan is up front and offensively. Scoring goals it's got to be addressed. Forwards got to score, and they need more goal production. And I don't know how that changes. I think there's probably going to be some personnel changes needed, but they got to get more into the box. They got to get more offensive. They got to create more offense.
Agreed.
This is Kendall Showers, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
Okay, Scott, let's talk about League One Alberta. There were no matches on Tuesday this week, so nothing to talk about there. But there are, as usual, on Friday, a bunch of matches. The full slate, as usual, I think a total of 4.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of games in Calgary. We have Rangers hosting Edmonton Scottish over at Weber. This will be a battle between 2nd and 4th on the men's side, and then a bottom-of-the-table clash on the women's side between 7th and 8th. And then we have Cavalry U21s facing Callies United at Shouldice. This is kind of a toward the bottom of the table clash. Cavalry in 7th, Callies in 8th. And then we have Villains hosting St. Albert at Broadview, which on the men's side is 5th against 9th. And then on the women's side is 6th against 3rd.
In Edmonton, Foothills will be traveling up there to play BTB, and BTB is at the top of the table on the men's side. Foothills is 6th, and on the women's side, well, Foothills is 1st and BTB is 4th. BTB has worked their way up on the women's side in the table a fair bit. The 2 teams at the top of the table will be represented that evening in Edmonton. Thank you for listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast. You can have this podcast downloaded to your device as soon as it becomes available by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or other platforms. Check out our website at yycsoccer.com, where you can look through our episode archive and find other options to listen, including our YouTube channel. We also have links to buy Scott's book, Here Come the Cavalry. It's all about Calgary's pro soccer history. You can leave a question or comment in the Contact Us section of our website. You can also interact with us on social media, such as Twitter or Instagram or Blue Sky, where our username is YYC Soccer 403. Thanks for listening.